The only difference I see between what I'm doing and what I've observed, I guess, mainstream games doing is I consider players rolling for their own perception or things like this as bleeding heavily into gamist or metagamist mentality, right? Because the end result feeling is, okay, I know I rolled perfectly well, or as well as possible, and I know that there's no one hiding in that patch of woods because the dice just told me I know, and therefore my player knows. If it filters through the GM and the GM says you believe that there's no one hiding in the woods, then the player doesn't really know X or Y.
Well, we've been seeing this going all the way back to the 70s. I mean, you can go all the way back to the Fantasy Trip by Steve Jackson, and you will find that you know the game master is making all the perception rolls, and very much along those lines. Now, I'm going to take a little issue with your creative agenda talk. You seem pretty focused on the idea that gamist play is very separated play. You know, that the people aren't caring about the fiction in the same fashion.
Oh no, I think they care. I think it's a different experience, it's a different feeling, isn't it?
Well, it's definitely a different creative and social goal. That's for sure. So that's fine. But it seems to me, first of all, that we should talk about the mechanics that you want to use for the reasons that you want. And in your case, or the way that you look at it, it's that you just don't want people to be doing that. You don't want them to be rolled there, to have the knowledge that they even had to check their perception. Right? So let's just leave it at that. It's not something you want in the design and the experience of this game, that you say, make a perception roll. And I'm already in the state of, ooh, something's out there, let's check it out. And I could, let's say, hypothetically, that I am the player, and let's say that I am playing in a game, not yours, in which the GM says, make a perception roll. And of course, we're lurking our way through a dark forest and wondering what's going on, and hoping that the disease that blighted the cattle and your kid, we can find its source. We're doing this, and so you say, someone, not you, because this is not your game, says make a perception check, and I do, and I look at my sheet, and I've got a 9 or less, and I'm like, oh man, I suck, and I roll, and sure enough, I failed. And let's pretend, Dan, just for a second, that this particular player is perfectly capable of embracing the fiction entirely, and says, my dude is oblivious. I'm going to play them oblivious. I'm liking them being oblivious. I live by this dice roll. I'm good. And the viewer, insofar as I know that there's something out there, that's just the viewer knows, right? I know the viewer knows that something's out there, and I know damn well that I don't. And that's how I'm playing it. It's not going to change. No, I'm going to play my character super oblivious, in fact, and I'm going to like it. Now, that person, I'm saying that your desire not to have that, your desire to simply say, we're going to keep it simple, your knowledge is character knowledge, and we're going to control it all the way back at the at the beginning, is your preference, and we're just going to call it your preference. You want it because you want it, and we're going to do that. I mean, in your experience, it may have, in your point of view, may be that you just aren't going to trust enough people to do that, and you may be right.
Well, no, so I think of it as, I mean, so I know that there are players, most players probably, are capable of playing it consistently. So I roll, determine that my character fails at whatever perception, and then I'm going to play it consistently, and that's what we expect. But I think it's a richer experience for me as a player when I don't have to play as if I don't know,
Right. I
because
understand your
I
point of view. Yeah,
okay,
I
okay.
understand your point of view. The point that what I'm trying to say is let's accept it as your point of view. Let's
Okay,
accept
sure.
it,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we don't have to justify it or contrast it to anyone else's experience or the way
Oh,
that they
yeah,
do it
yeah, yeah,
at
yeah.
all, because we're
No,
going
no.
to get into a really unproductive discussion of how I can be better at being oblivious when I know there's something to be oblivious about. You see,
Yeah,
and
right.
that you see, we could. I know people who will fight you on that one, right? They'll say, "No,
Yeah.
you're infantilized players who just suck on your teat, are nothing as compared to my commitment to the fiction based on that."
Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you see
yeah.
what I mean? Let's not get into
Okay,
who's
okay,
more
sure.
rich, who's having the richer experience. This is what you
Right.
want, and we're going to be happy. I'm happy with that. So
Yeah, I'm too old. I'm
yeah,
too old for the old fights.
yeah, right. So what I think we can do is accept that there are a wide variety of aesthetics and methods, and we're going to pick
Oh,
one.
sure.
Because if we
Yeah,
don't,
yeah,
we're going to have a mess. So
yeah, yeah.
if you picked,
It's not worth.
good. Thank God you
Yeah.
chose. Right. So so now I mean, I know that I'm lurking through the forest, and I know, and as a member of this game that you played, this is your game now. As a member of this game, I'm actually fairly uh, aware. I mean, I can hear you rattling dice all the time. I know sooner or later I'm probably going to fail a perception check, and that's how that is. And so when the panther lands on my back, um, it. Here's the thing. I'm real interested now in two things. One is the action, but also the somewhat vaguer notion of when and how we do find out. And find out is wrong, right? Find out is a modern point of view. I think in a more generic term would be confront. When do we confront certain inescapable realities of our situation? Right? Now, is that also under the GM's control, or is that aided in some fashion by the dice? In other words, what can we learn about the witch? Or if learn is not the right word, what can we find ourselves confronting that is undeniably witchly?
Right.
Um, and how does that come about? Is that just something you have in Pendragon? The GM just has it taped. After they get over the river, that's when the Nixie sticks her heads up. That's done. It's set.
Oh,
Right.
no, I wouldn't. I wouldn't enjoy that. My own GMing paradigm is to make a really good faith effort at either what they call sandboxing. I don't know if that's the right term, or
Nobody knows what
I.
sandboxing means. Everyone just
Yeah,
uses it.
that's
So
right.
yeah,
I used to think, oh, that means that, and then I'm like, oh, there's 20 other definitions.
yeah. It's the new immersion, right? As a term,
Uh,
and I'm done.
okay.
I'm done talking about
Yeah.
that. So yeah, go on.
All right.
Yeah.
So I go with a the 10,000 pebbles at the top of the mountain falling down. I believe in a good faith cause and effect effort where um, there's different pieces on the massive board, some of which are players, some of which are not, and I just believe in spending the time to think, here's where this cause and effect chain led,
Right.
and then I do that over and over again,
Right.
and so.
They did this,
Uh,
and what would do that? I mean, what if I'm not
yeah.
sure just what works for you in this particular game and setting, but suffice to say that if the witch is up in the hills and we have forged up into the hills under whatever impression we may have that something's going on, um, and also I'm thinking about some of the fiction and myth in which is deliberately meant to be a little alien or primeval, in which
Mhm.
the characters will do something that from a modern point of view just doesn't seem to make much sense. We are going to take this sick child up the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
We just are. You know, that there's a logic there, but it's not immediately or intuitively accessible to us as readers.
Mm-hmm.
When we read something like that, you're like, okay, so the rest of this story is about their struggle up the mountain with this sick child.
Right.
Really not seeing what makes that happen.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe if the author's feeling kind, then much later in the story, they may have the character make a passing reference to some way of thought that brought us here. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but in some ways, you just have to kind of swallow and embrace it and say, well, this is what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway, so there we are up there, and I'm interested in the causal activities of the characters that might, in the GM's mind, get the pebbles rolling or be something that prompts activity. I mentioned the panther only in the sense that with the witch around, the forest is a much deadlier place,
Mm-hmm.
and perhaps that's no ordinary panther. Is
Right.
involved, and I'm curious in that for a couple of reasons. And I know you said good faith, and I trust you on this. There is a dangerous side to this, which is to what I call the tap dance right in front of the players. So that whatever it is the players do, you wiggle a whole bunch of stuff so that what you want to happen happens right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a danger. It's a danger. It's a danger in
Sure.
almost all role playing. In fact,
Sure. Yeah.
it's even treated as a virtue in many role playing texts,
Sure.
and I consider it a bit fraudulent as a
Mm-hmm.
practice. Um, and I mean, somehow they rest when they desperately need it. Somehow they find the clue when all seems dark. And it's
Mm-hmm.
very fine for your kind of up and down pacing, but it's awfully taped in
Yeah.
practice. Did you
Yep.
ever see the short, the Wrong Trousers, the Wallace and Gromit short?
If I have, I've forgotten it.
Well, there's a famous sequence where Gromit, the dog, is having a duel with a wicked penguin who's actually shooting at him with a revolver. Um, and they're on top of a toy train set that's set up in very elaborate fashion all around the room. And the penguin, clever enough to change the track control so that Gromit's train car is going to go off to a portion of track that just ends.
Mm-hmm.
And Gromit, thinking quickly, seizes a box of unlaid track, of track pieces.
Oh, I have
And then,
seen this.
yeah, it's very famous. And he
Yeah.
rapidly lays down the track right in front. And the most important part about it, most important for my analogy, is that since he can curve, he can pick the curved pieces. So he
Right.
can bend the track back where he wants to go.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm saying that, a GMs do.
Yeah.
Yeah, the players are going to do, and you just keep laying the track right in front of them, and golly gee, it goes where you want.
Yeah.
And so I'm just talking about that as a danger in play of this kind. So in the fullness of time, I'll be very interested in what we might call hard prep.
Mm-hmm.
Pendragon has the hardest of prep, to the point of pre-scripting. At least in terms of the many books of published scenarios that they have.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not necessarily recommending that. I'm just saying that for a game that relies very heavily on the players just embracing what it is they're being told, and even embracing the way my characters look at things as told to me, that really super hard prep of exactly what's there in a heavily organized way, theatrically organized, much in the sense of, well, if they do this, then the next thing that happens is that. That's one way to do it. Another way is the way that I just criticized. And if I'm not mistaken, there's more ways, and one of them is the way you're doing it. And so I'm curious when we get there. Maybe not right now.
Hmm.
But do you see how that to me is going to be a huge structural piece of knowing
Hmm.
how anything happens ever in
Right.
that play?